The power flickered and then went out. The room went dark, save for the faint glow of the ventilator's backup, light blinking urgently in the corner. I stood frozen for a moment, processing what had just happened. The sound of the ventilator, the lifeline that kept my disabled daughter breathing, had gone eerily quiet. No, I couldn't believe it. My heart stopped for a second as the panic set in. I rushed to her side, frantically checking the machine, my mind racing. There was no time to waste. The backup system had only minutes of power left. I needed to act fast. And then I heard it, the familiar voice of Karen from across the street, cutting through the chaos with that same smug, entitled tone. "It's just one more violation," she said, as if everything would be just fine. She didn't know what she had just done. She had no idea that in this moment, her little act of vengeance had set off a chain of events that could cost my daughter everything. My hands shook as I worked to reset the machine, but the reality of what had just happened hit me like a ton of bricks. Karen had cut the power, and she had no idea who I was or the consequences of messing with the wrong person. She didn't realize that I wasn't just a father trying to protect my child. I was an FBI agent. This wasn't just a petty neighborhood squabble anymore. This was personal. What would you do if you were me? Would you let her walk away after putting your daughter's life at risk, or would you make her pay for what she's done? I was used to Karen's complaints. As the self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood rules, she never seemed to tire of finding new ways to make our lives difficult. From petty complaints about the height of the grass in the yard to the number of toys left on the porch, she was always quick to make sure everyone adhered to her version of the rules. But this was different. This was crossing a line. My daughter, Emily, had been born with a severe medical condition that required constant medical attention. The ventilator was not just a convenience for her, it was her lifeline. Every night, it kept her breathing, and I made sure everything was set up perfectly, double-checked for any issues. She was safe, she was stable, but that stability could be shattered in an instant if something went wrong. When we moved into this quiet suburban neighborhood, I thought we were finally leaving behind the chaos of city life and settling into peace. I couldn't have been more wrong. Karen had always found ways to make things difficult. She didn't like how we had a ramp in the front yard for Emily's wheelchair. She didn't like how the lights in the backyard stayed on longer than she preferred. But I never imagined she would stoop this low. I remember the exact moment the lights went out. I had just finished dinner, and Emily had settled into her room. The ventilator hummed softly, filling the room with a reassuring sound. My wife was sitting in the living room, and everything felt normal. Then out of nowhere the lights flickered once, then twice, and went completely dark. The sound of the ventilator stopped. At first, I thought it was just a power outage. We'd had them before. Sometimes the lines were faulty or the weather was to blame. But then I heard Karen's voice drifting over the fence, calm and indifferent, as if she were simply telling me about a broken mailbox. "David," she called from her front porch, "the power is off. You know the HOA rules about how long you can run those machines." My blood went cold. I quickly rushed to Emily's room, my heart in my throat. No backup light. No reassuring sound of the ventilator. My hands were shaking, and I rushed to turn the power back on. The backup generator flickered on, but it wasn't enough. It could barely keep the machine running for a few minutes. My thoughts were in a frenzy. Why would Karen do this? How could she think this was acceptable? I immediately pulled out my phone and called the electric company, demanding answers. They confirmed my worst fear. The power had been intentionally cut off to my house. That was when it hit me. Karen had done this. She had cut the electricity to my daughter's ventilator. And she didn't even know who she was messing with. I stood in the dark, the silence pressing in around me, only the soft hum of the backup generator filling the space. My mind was racing. Why would she do this? What kind of person would intentionally put a child's life in jeopardy over a petty neighborhood dispute? I couldn't grasp the audacity of it. The HOA rules, her obsession with control, had somehow blinded her to what really mattered. Her actions had almost cost my daughter her life. I knew what I had to do next. This wasn't a simple conversation anymore. This was a matter of justice. I walked through the front door and out onto the porch, my fists clenched at my sides. Karen's house was just across the street, and she was standing on her porch, casually sipping her iced tea, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just taken the most dangerous step she could have ever taken. I crossed the yard with determination in every step. As I approached her, she turned to face me, her usual smug smile in place, as if she had won some petty victory. "David," she said, her tone sickeningly sweet, "I think you should consider how much noise those machines make. The neighbors, I didn't let her finish. My voice was low, controlled, but there was no hiding the anger simmering beneath it. You cut the power to my house. Her smile faltered for just a second, but she recovered quickly, as if she hadn't just put my daughter's life at risk. Oh, well, it's against HOA rules for you to have all those things running in your home. You're disrupting the peace of the neighborhood. I could feel the rage building inside me, but I held it back. I took another step toward her, getting closer. My presence was imposing, and she had no idea who she was dealing with. Listen carefully, Karen, I said, my voice steady, my control unwavering. You think that by cutting off the electricity, you were just following some rules. But you didn't consider one thing. You didn't think about the consequences. I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words settle. That ventilator is keeping my daughter alive. You understand that, right? Her expression remained unreadable. She had that same entitled, defensive look. I'm just trying to enforce the rules, David. I didn't know about your daughter's condition. You didn't know, or you just didn't care. I shot back, because if you had known, you would have known better than to play God with my family's safety. Her face tightened, the facade of calm starting to crack. I was just trying to. Enough. I cut her off, stepping closer, my anger barely contained now. You don't get to hide behind rules anymore. You made a choice, Karen, and that choice could have killed my daughter. There was a beat of silence, the weight of what I said sinking in. Her eyes darted away for a moment, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected, fear. I didn't mean to, she started again, but I was done with her excuses. I was done playing nice. I don't care what your excuses are, I said, my voice sharp, as my FBI training kicked in. What you did wasn't just wrong, it was criminal. You put my daughter's life in danger, and I will make sure you face the consequences for that. She opened her mouth to protest, but this time, no words came out. The reality was setting in. You don't know who I am, do you? I asked, my voice quiet but lethal. I'm not just a father. I'm an FBI agent, Karen. And now this isn't just a neighborhood dispute, it's a federal offense. I watched her face as she processed my words. The color drained from her face, her smugness slipping away completely as she realized the magnitude of what she had done. I wasn't just someone she could intimidate with rules and regulations anymore. I'm going to make sure this is reported, I said, my tone cold and firm. You will answer for what you've done. For the first time, Karen's composure cracked. She stammered, her voice shaking. I didn't know. I didn't know it was that serious, David. Please. Too late for that, I said. You crossed the line, Karen. And now you'll face the consequences. I turned to walk back to my house, my heart still racing, my mind racing even faster. This wasn't over. Karen thought she could get away with her twisted sense of control, but she was wrong. No one messes with my family, especially not like this. As I stepped back onto my porch, I glanced at the still humming ventilator, knowing my daughter was safe for now. But I had no illusions. This was just the beginning. I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the faint hum of the ventilator that now hummed steadily in Emily's room, a comforting sound that reminded me we were safe for the moment. But my mind refused to rest. The events of the day of Karen's dangerous decision kept replaying in my head over and over again. The flames of anger hadn't fully died yet. She had almost taken everything from me. I had already called my supervisors at the FBI. The wheels of justice were in motion now. I had no doubt Karen would soon realize the gravity of her actions, but didn't make me feel any better. Nothing would undo what she had done. But this was personal now. The more I thought about it, the more the sense of betrayal festered inside me. She thought she could control me, my family, just another homeowner caught in her crosshairs. But she had no idea who she was messing with. The truth of the matter was, Karen didn't know who I was, but now, she was going to find out. It wasn't until the next morning that I received the call. My heart skipped a beat as I heard the voice of my partner, an old friend from the bureau. David, we got the full picture now. We're moving forward with a formal investigation into Karen's actions. Good, I said, my jaw tightening. But make it clear, this isn't just about cutting the power. This is about what she put my daughter through. This is about intent. She could have killed her. Understood, he replied. We're already in touch with the local authorities. We'll be treating this as a criminal case from here on out. And David, he hesitated for a moment. You may want to prepare yourself. This goes deeper than we thought. The line went dead before I could ask him what he meant. I sat there, holding the phone in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. What did he mean by deeper? I glanced over at Emily, who was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. The ventilator was doing its job, keeping her safe for now. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't the only one with something to hide. I spent the rest of the morning on the phone with various authorities, local police, the HOA, even some colleagues from my past cases. And what I learned sent a chill down my spine. Karen wasn't just a rule-enforcing HOA president with a personal vendetta. There were whispers of her involvement in other neighborhood incidents, things that had gone unnoticed until now. Things that hinted at a pattern of manipulation, intimidation, and downright cruelty. It wasn't just about the noise complaint or the broken fence. It was about her need to control everything around her, regardless of who got hurt in the process. But that wasn't the worst of it. It turned out Karen had been digging into my past too. Through some backdoor channels, she had learned about my job with the FBI, and from what I gathered, she had been keeping tabs on me for some time. Maybe it was out of spite, or maybe because she felt threatened by me. But that was the moment when I realized the depth of her obsession. She didn't just want to ruin my life. She wanted to control it. The anger inside me flared up again. This wasn't just a simple case of neighborhood rivalry. This was a personal attack. Later that afternoon, I decided to pay Karen a visit. I was done waiting. I had to face her head on. I wasn't just going to let her slink back into her little world of lies and manipulation. Not after what she had done. I walked up to her house, each step heavy with purpose. The door was slightly ajar, the faint sound of music playing inside. I knocked sharply, not bothering to wait. Karen answered, her eyes widening when she saw me standing there. "David," she said, feigning surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cold. "It's time we have a real conversation. Not about HOA rules. Not about petty complaints. It's time you face the consequences of what you did." Her smile faltered. She stepped back, allowing me to enter. I could tell she wasn't expecting this. "I already told you," she said quickly, trying to regain control. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know your daughter was." "Stop right there," I interrupted. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You didn't care that my daughter's life was on the line. You only cared about your own power, your own rules." Her composure began to crack. She fidgeted, and I could see the guilt in her eyes, though she tried to mask it with arrogance. "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood, David. It's my job." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You're not protecting anyone. You're destroying lives. You did it to mine, and you've done it to others too. Now you're going to pay for it." Karen opened her mouth, probably to protest, but I could see the realization hit her. She had gone too far, and now there was no turning back. "You think you're untouchable," I said, my voice low and steady, "but you're about to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong family." The FBI was already moving in on her, and I was no longer just an observer. I was part of the team that would bring her down. "Prepare yourself, Karen," I said, turning to leave. "This is only the beginning." The following days were a blur. The FBI was already investigating Karen's actions, but the impact of what had happened still weighed heavily on me. As much as I wanted to focus on ensuring Emily's safety, I knew that this wasn't going to be resolved quietly. Karen had made a choice, a dangerous one, and now she would face the consequences. But I couldn't help feeling a sense of unease. I had always prided myself on keeping my work and my personal life separate. I had never let my career as an FBI agent affect my family life. But now, everything was intertwined. Karen had forced my hand, dragging me and my family into something far darker than I had ever expected. The next evening, as I sat down to dinner with Emily and my wife, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see Karen lurking on the other side of the street, trying to get a glimpse of us. But there was nothing, at least nothing visible. But the feeling didn't go away. Something was off. "Dad, are you okay?" Emily asked, her small voice breaking through my thoughts. I looked down at her, forcing a smile. "Yes, sweetie. Just a little tired." She smiled back, but there was something in her eyes that told me she knew more than I was letting on. The past few days had shaken her, too, and I knew she could feel the tension in the house. She was scared, and I would give anything to take that fear away from her. "I'm fine, Emily," I said, trying to reassure her. "We're safe. Don't worry." But I wasn't sure I believed my own words. The phone rang, cutting through the silence of the room. My heart skipped a beat as I reached for it. It was a private number. I answered quickly, knowing it could be related to the investigation. "David," a voice on the other end said. It was my partner from the bureau. "We've got news. We found more on Karen. And it's worse than we thought." I stood up, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" "There are connections to some underground activities, David. Money laundering. She's been using the HOA as a front for some pretty serious operations. It's more than just petty complaints, it's organized crime. And now we've got her." I could barely process the words. Karen had been more than just a nuisance. She had been hiding behind a facade, manipulating everyone around her, all while running a criminal operation right under our noses. And I had almost let her slip away. I ran a hand over my face, tried to steady my thoughts. "What happens now?" "We'll be moving in soon," my partner replied. "We've got enough evidence to take her down. But we're going to need your full cooperation on this one. We're going to bring her in, David. It's time she faces the full consequences." I could feel the anger rising again. Karen had used her position to hurt people. She hadn't just endangered my daughter, she had been exploiting everyone around her for her own gain. And now, she was going to pay for it. "I'm in," I said firmly. "Do whatever you need to do. Just make sure she doesn't walk away from this." The line went quiet for a moment. "We won't. This is bigger than we thought. We're closing in on her, David." I hung up the phone and turned back to Emily and my wife, who were both looking at me with concern. I could see the worry in their eyes. But this wasn't over yet. Karen had tried to destroy my family, and now, the full extent of her crimes was about to be uncovered. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. There would be backlash. People would question everything that had happened, and Karen would fight to the bitter end. But she had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The FBI had raided Karen's house, seized her assets, and uncovered a web of illegal activities that stretched far beyond anything we had imagined. It wasn't just the HOA anymore. Karen had been involved in a much larger network of crime, and the damage she had caused was far-reaching. The news of her arrest spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. People were shocked. No one could believe that the woman who had seemed so harmless, so obsessed with rules, had been running a criminal enterprise behind their backs. It was surreal, seeing the neighbors talk about it in hushed tones, unsure of who they could trust. As for me, I didn't care about the attention. I cared about Emily. I cared about my family being safe. I sat down beside her that night, after the dust had settled. The house was quieter now, the tension slowly easing out of the air. We had survived. We had fought back. "You did, Dad," Emily said softly, her head resting against my shoulder. I smiled down at her, my heart full of love and pride. "We did it, sweetie. We all did." The morning after Karen's arrest felt different. The air seemed less tense, though still charged with the weight of what had happened. Emily, sitting beside me at the breakfast table, seemed more at ease. Her once fearful gaze was softer now, her quiet smile slowly returning to her face. She was safe. We were safe. But the damage was still there, lingering in the shadows. I knew Emily would never forget the terror of that day, the way her life had been threatened by someone who didn't even care enough to know the truth about her. And as much as I wanted to protect her from those memories, I couldn't erase them. Still, we moved forward, one step at a time. That's all we could do. Emily had returned to her routine, school, and playtime, but everything felt different. I saw the change in her. She'd grown up a little more, faced something most adults would never have to endure. She had witnessed something far too cruel for someone so young. But she was resilient. She was my strength. I was back at work, but there was an undeniable shift. The FBI team that had worked on the case against Karen had been thorough. She was going down for everything she'd done, and more. The charges against her were severe, and they were just the tip of the iceberg. As it turned out, her HOA position had been the perfect cover for her illegal dealings. The money laundering, the fraud, the extortion, it was all part of a well-organized operation that had been running under the radar for years. For me, though, there was a deeper sense of justice that came with her arrest. This wasn't just about bringing Karen down. It was about sending a message. A message that you can't just take someone's life and manipulate it for your own gain without facing consequences. No one could touch my family, not while I was still standing. And yet, in the quiet moments when the house was still and I was alone with my thoughts, I kept coming back to one thing. Why? Why did she do it? What was it about me, my family, that pushed her to this point? I never got the answers I wanted, but I knew one thing for sure. She had underestimated us. That night, after putting Emily to bed, I sat alone in the living room, reflecting. The weight of the day was settling on me. The triumph, yes, but also the toll it had taken. The stress, the fear, the anger, it was all still there, buried beneath a sense of relief. I could hear the faint hum of the ventilator in the background, the comforting sound of my daughter's breath. But my thoughts were interrupted when my wife walked into the room, sitting beside me. She placed her hand on mine, offering a silent comfort. "You did it," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "We did it." I smiled, but it was more out of exhaustion than triumph. We had survived the storm. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Without you, Emily, without all of us, none of this would have been possible." She nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "You kept us safe. You kept our family together. That's what matters. Nothing else." And in that moment I realized something important. The justice we had fought for, the victory over Karen, it wasn't just for us. It was for Emily. It was for every parent who would go to any length to protect their child. It was for anyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of an injustice. But more than anything, it was a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful they thought they were, could ever take away the things that truly mattered: family, love, and the unshakable will to protect those you cherish. The next morning, as I watched Emily playing outside, the sun casting its light over her small form, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The world might try to bring you down, it might try to destroy what you love, but as long as you stand firm, as long as you fight for what's right, you can rebuild. And I would always fight for my family. I smiled, my heart full, as I looked at Emily. We were free. And that was everything. If you've watched this far, you've seen how far a parent will go to protect their child. You've witnessed a story of resilience, justice, and the fight for what truly matters. And I want to know, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you let someone like Karen walk away? Or would you stand up, no matter the cost, to protect those you love? If this story moved you, if it made you think about the things that really matter in life, hit that subscribe button. This isn't just a one-time thing. It's the beginning of a journey where we stand up against those who think they can control us. Together, we'll share more stories of bravery, justice, and the kind of love that cannot be broken. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in this situation? Subscribe now and join us for more. Because when we stand together, nothing can break us.